Scott Jarvis, Newton High School. Scott is known as one of the most innovative and influential leaders in terms of high school athletics marketing and facility improvements. Scott is a graduate of Westmore University, where he later served as intramural director and assistant football coach. Scott received his Master's of Science degree from the United States Sports Academy and received a second Master's of Science in Education from Drake University.
Well, it was kind of a different story. It's probably not the most traditional, but I actually wanted to be a lawyer. I was going to school for political science, and after I got done with school, my football coach said, "Hey, we'd love to have you stay on and be like a student assistant. You can take graduate credits at USD." I was like, "Oh man, that sounds great." He's like, "You can always go to law school. You can always do that." And so I started working with the intramural department. I was a resident director for the university, and then kind of one thing led to another, and then here I am loving, working with the student athletes, working with the students, and then having the opportunity then to go to MFL Marmac and be the athletic director and football coach there, and then go to Muscatine, and then, bam, I'm a district athletic director up at Burnsville, and then had the opportunity to go out to Seattle, and then my heart led me back to Iowa, and had the opportunity to be the athletic director at Newton High School, and then Ankeny Centennial, where I got to meet you. My dad was a football coach when I was a young kid, so all the kids in high school at Eldora, New Providence, called me Tag Along, because I was, on my dad's coattails the whole time I was a little kid. So even when I was a little kid, I'd be the one that was setting up the Tecmo Bowl football tournaments for the city block of kids. And then, I fell in love with the opportunity to help student athletes. I think one person that had a huge impact on my life was my high school football coach, Dennis Hale. Oh, choked up. But he, just made a huge impact on me. My mom and dad got divorced when I was like 4 or 5. And so my dad was in Iowa, I was up in Minnesota. And so he was like just kind of my pseudo father figure, and made sure I was staying out of trouble for the most part. But without him, I probably would not be where I am today. He just had a huge impact on my life, and I wanted to, be able to provide the kids that I work with now what he did for me. So he was a huge, huge impact for me.
Scott's first role as athletic director was at MFL Marmac from 2000 to 2004. Scott moved on to Muscatine High School from 2004 to 2006, succeeding the former 2-time National Athletic Director of the Year, Chuck Van Heck. Scott moved on to Burnsville, Minnesota from 2006 to 2010. With newly developed grade requirements, the student athletes were held accountable for their grades and actions on and off the field. Scott spent the next 2 years as a senior athletic director of athletics at Easton Catholic in the state of Washington.
I think probably one would be slow down, take it all in. I think so many times throughout my career, it's like the movie Click. You just want to fast forward and get to the next thing, and just slow down and kind of just be in the moment. That was one thing I was not very good at, and still probably am not great at. But continue to try to strive to get better in, I've loved the relationships I've had the opportunity to make throughout my career. But, in the AD role, I think sometimes your family's probably the last one that, you serve. And then I think for yourself, pour into yourself, make sure you're spending time with family and friends. And the one thing that I've found that's worked for me is I have to be intentional with my time. And for me, that means I got to have it on the calendar. Like making sure my kids' games are in there, making sure, if I'm gonna go spend time with friends, I got that on the calendar, because I completely live by the calendar. I think a lot of our ADs do. And there's one thing that you cannot buy, and it's time. I wish you could. I wish you could go back and buy time, because there's so many times in my life I wish I could go back and say, man, I want that piece back. So hopefully you can, reminisce and reflect on your career as an athletic administrator. And don't wait until you're done. Don't wait until you're like sitting here 25 years later and like, oh wow, I wish I would have, probably appreciated those times a little bit more, because you're always, again, 150 million miles an hour. And I think sometimes we lose sight of what's really important, and we lose sight of our why and our purpose.
Scott moved on to Newton from 2012 to 2018. While at Newton, Cardinal athletic teams have earned the Excellence in Academic Award 32 times. Scott then moved on to Centennial High School in Ankeny, Iowa from 2018 to 2021.
For me, it's probably just the fact that I've had the opportunity to meet so many awesome people. I've gotten to work with some amazing coaches, some amazing student athletes, and if there's one thing I'm most proud of throughout my career, it's not the trophies and the championships, and it's really the relationships I've been able to build. Doug Bowe, who was a legendary coach up in Minnesota, I learned a lot from him. And since I started being an AD so young, I'm 25 years old and I'm, supposed to be leading guys who are legends, 50, 60 years old. I follow Chuck Van Heck at Muscatine, who's he walks around Newton and he walks around like Jesus walking on water, So it was tough in those positions, but every place I went, every person I met, I learned something from. And I think throughout my career, that's what I cherish most, are those moments. And Doug Bowe told me one time as a basketball coach, he goes, and this stuck with me, and I always think about this when we are in those tough moments that we have with parents and student athletes. He goes, I don't want the AD who's going to be there with me grabbing the championship trophy and hoisting it. I want the AD that's going to be near me when times are down and I need support. And I think that really stuck with me, and I've understood and realized how much our coaches need our support as athletic administrators, because it is a tough job. I love this quote, I have it in one of my presentations, but Woodrow Wilson said, hey, it's easier to be president than it is to be a coach, because at least I have security detail. So I always think about that, and again, throughout my career, whether it was at MFL Marmac, getting to work with Ed Berry, who's my principal, or at Muscatine, working with Chuck Van Heck, who was a huge impact on me, and I learned so much from him and what the AD role really looks like, because he was amazing. And I didn't probably realize it as much as I do now, as I've gone through all the things that I've gone through, but how he just has made such a huge impact on an entire community. And I think that's what's so awesome about our profession. We can make the impact on the lives of student athletes, coaches, and an entire community. And what an amazing opportunity that we have as athletic directors and coaches to do that, but a huge responsibility and tons of pressure that comes with that too. So we need to take care of ourselves just as much as we need to take care of others.
Scott was named a finalist for the 2014-2015 National High School Athletic Coaches Association Athletic Director of the Year. Scott has also been named the 2015-16 Iowa High School Athletic Director Association Central Iowa AD of the Year, as well as receiving the 2015-16 and the 2017-18 NIAAA Distinguished Service Award, and received the 2016-17 NFHS Citation Award. Scott has also been awarded the prestigious Ken Beverlin Award by the IHSADA, which is in recognition of being a past president.
At MFL, it was Ed Berry. When I was up at Burnsville, I had Doug Bowe was a great role model for me, Dr. Kay Joyce. When I went out to Eastside Catholic, I got to work with a bunch of amazing coaches, and there I got the opportunity to hire just about every coach I worked with, which was an amazing experience. So I got to work with Bill Lyerly, Jeremy Thielbar, Sister Mary Tracy, and then came back to Newton, and again, just a great community. I got to work with Bill Peters, Dave Kalkoff, and then I got to meet some legendary athletic directors in their own mind, with Bruce Hoffmeyer, who was great mentor for me when I came into Newton, and just kind of learning the landscape of the community, but just an awesome individual. And then I actually had the opportunity to go to Ankeny Centennial and got to work with Dr. Lindeman, and got to work with Brent Butcher and Andy Untham. Again, I go back to that, the part of my job I love the most was just those relationships.
Hall of Famer Scott Garvis.